chess friends, hope you are doing well. Today I am excited to share with you a splendid chess opening strategy and middle games tactics which is innovated by Torch. This game was played between Torch and Rufgade, both are the super chess engines from the world. In this game not only Torch discovered a new chess opening strategy, rather, he brilliantly sacrificed his pieces, which is impressive. So let's get started without wasting any time. Torch started the game with e4. And you are gonna observe his new opening strategy in the Sicilian defense, c5 from Rufgade, and he considered to go with e6. This is the French variation of Sicilian where black wants to play d5, sometimes d6. Queen d6 is the popular move to dominate over the d4 square along with knight c6. The dark square bishop usually goes to c5, and even on e7, which is absolutely fine. Another opening system for black is to play a6 b5, traditionally put his bishop on b7 to activate his diagonal, and from the white's perspective, he have the usual knight c3 and d4 move ideas. Alright, but Torch seems very authentic who played g6. His opening strategy gets different from what we see usually in the Sicilian defense. He played a6 to develop in his queen sight and planting the bishop on b7. After a few moves, black seems very ridiculous who decided not to go with d5 or d6. Comparatively, he considered to play knight f6, attacking to the pawn. You may think of playing knight c3 stuff, but remember, he can hold on the center with d6. And you will lose the opportunity to dominate the center. Our new opening strategy emphasizes to dominate the center by pushing your e-pawn, which is actually played by Torch. This e-pawn becomes an excellent asset for white, controlling d6 and f6 square. Furthermore, it provides the open diagonal for the bishop. Now consider of playing knight c3 followed by e4 to dominate over the d6 square involves a long-term strategic plan of this opening. Additionally, we will discuss how we will attack in the king's sight by engaging the queen and knight to overwhelm black's position. Just watch the full video till the end, otherwise you will lose my chess principles and ideas. We have knight d5 from black. Rather than playing the usual stuffs like d4, knight c3 or rook e1, he evaluate to go with d3, not to strike in the center immediately. Rufgade becomes arrogant and played queen c1 and d6. Try to eliminate the key pawn which is necessary for future attacks, but believe me, even if your opponent tries to annihilate your e5 pawn before castling, he will be dead lost. First play c4, danger level, then play the tricky move bishop f4. Now he have two moves to consider, either he can take it or push it, but both moves are rubbish. First we will look at d takes e5 variation, then just capture the pawn. Either he can take it or block it by the bishop. If your opponent blocks it with the bishop, which seems logical and appropriate, here comes the crashing move bishop takes c6, he have to capture with the pawn, and then play d5, striking in the center right away. He may think of playing castle, but after take, knight d3 will create a double attack to the queen and the bishop, so queen slides at e7, knight captured, queen captured, and now you get the opportunity to accomplish an attack with bishop d6. You will get the rook by using this opening strategy. Going back, we have seen bishop d6 move. Now let's say black plays knight takes e5, but the issue with this move is that, after bishop takes knight you can't block it with your bishop, as I can take the pawn on g7, so queen e7 knight d2, to maneuver the knight through e5 to d6, where the knight can lead into a venturesome position for white. Alright, we have knight d7 queen to a4 to pin down the knight to the king, and b5 can't solve your issue as I can take the pawn, which will be a delicious position for me. Some of you may try your playing f6, try to retreat the bishop because black's position is completely incapacitated, 60% of his pieces are in back rank, unable to get out from their safe zone. Alternatively, some may try of playing queen g5, attacking to the bishop, but here comes the knight on f3, kicking out the queen all the way back. The king is exiled in the center, unable to break free from their misery and sufferings, so you may try of playing f6, kicking out the bishop. Now the pawn is under attack, and e5 seems natural to bring out his bishop and castle in the king's side, but here comes the tragedy of your move, d5, challenging the two center pawns for a duel. Apparently, I can take away your pawn because your e-pawn is pinned down to your king. Therefore after you play bishop e7, I will play the nasty looking move bishop a5, annihilates the queen's position, forcing black to play b6, in order to move the knight on e6. Now the queen is completely trapped, and white is completely winning in this position. That's the superiority of this new opening strategy. Additionally, I am here to enhance your wisdom by making quotes for you. Walk away from anyone who's busy finding your faults while you are busy overlooking theirs. So going back to the opening, we have seen the variation behind d takes e5, let's consider black focuses to play d5, pushing the pawn, play knight c3 and after he brings out his bishop in order to play short castle, which seems very natural, but every natural looking moves are in this position is devious. After doing the center exchanges you can push the e-pawn, scrutinizing and attack to the queen. You have to move back your queen otherwise the game will be finished. You can expose the king by capturing the pawn. Now play a sneaky move a5, try to interrupting the knight to defend his d5 pawn. After black plays rook e8, pretending like he made a castle, here comes the devious move knight g5, challenging the king. If the king moves back, my queen will emphasize her power to overwhelm your position on h5, which will lead into a critical situation for you. In addition, I can capture your d5 pawn, after kicking away your knight by playing a5. This is the opening strategy to attack in the king side, so after you capture the knight with your bishop which seems logical, but here comes the queen h5 check, king runs rook takes check, followed by queen captured and checkmate. The game will be over for you. This is the deficiency of your lack of development. We saw both d takes e5 and d5 are completely rubbish move. So Rifgate finds the best move, knight d7, maximizing the pressure in the center, which is why I played queen a4, pinning one of the knight in this diagonal, so you can't execute and attack on e5. We have knight b6 queen a3, this queen a3 idea is to target the c-pawn, where if you ever dare to trade the pawns on e5, this c5 pawn will be vulnerable. Additionally, maneuver your knight through e2 to e5, executing an attack in c5. Alright, we have d5 knight c3 and knight b4 to attack on the pawn, but after queen b3, the game continues. You may wonder why black didn't take the pawn. For instance, if you really capture on d3, which seems very logical and efficient, I will ignore your threat can capture on d5, after you capture my rook I will take your knight away to get this half-open file. Now d6 is coming which is why bishop d7 is impossible. Some of you may think of capturing the pawn with the e6 soldier or the knight, but both moves are idiotic. No matter how you capture the pawn, I will recapture it with my knight. After that, face e6. Snipering the queen by the brave bishop, the queen needs to run, for instance, queen c6, then I will expose your king by capturing on f7, it's a discovered check to the king by the rook, and after the king moves knight g5 check will thunderbolt your king, the king becomes very panic and after bishop takes d5, it's a completely get lost situation for you, bishop f7 check is a threat, the king will be checkmated very soon in the game. Let it put like a puzzle for you. Try to analyze the position and find the checkmating sequences for white, write down your answer in the comments and I will give you love. Before that, let me make a joke for you otherwise you may feel boring and leave my video. Here, I bought you a calendar, your days are numbered now. Ah ha ha ha, don't leave my video otherwise I will eat you in chess without salt, and in this position, black didn't capture the pawn because he is not fool like you who is very much attached with wealths, he considered to play bishop e7, queen d1, and you can observe his opening scheme, he first put his pawn on e5, he situated his bishop on f4, by playing c4 he makes the vigorous position to place his knights on, bishop Funetto is comprehensive to govern in this diagonal. The pawn on e5 is taking control over the d6 and f6 squares, rook e1 is amiable to break open the file. These are the opening strategy which is performed by Torch. Some of you may argue that, hey Stockfish, these are the common strategy. No, knowledge is not enough to win, you have to execute an attack practically which I taught you. Now we are entering into the middle game. a moves later, we have castle, which is why Torch played queen e2, executing an attack with the knight and the queen in the king's side, which I discussed at the beginning of the video, and yes, the bishop can take the knight, but I will recapture it, therefore bishop e4 will be very effective to proceed an attack within this diagonal, and before that, you have to deal with this pawn. I showed you some opening strategy and tactics in the opening, and let me show you some tactical motives in the middle game. For instance, some of you may think of capturing the c-pawn, after d takes e4, bishop d7 in order to develop the bishop, but I will pin down the bishop to the queen, so the queen moves up, knight e4, creating a vulnerability situation in the center and in the king side to disrupt your position. After rook d8, I will play the stunning move which you can't imagine even in your dream, knight f6 check. What a brilliant and impressive move. The point is that if you capture it with the pawn, I will recapture it, plus, your queen is under attack, and the worst case scenario is that even your bishop can't block it because the rook is firing into the d-file. After the queen moves to anywhere, leave the bishop because we have contention with the king, not with the bishop. Play knight g5 to accomplish an attack in the king side, even if you capture the pawn with your bishop. Queen h5 will arrive to discozen your position, and after you capture the knight, it will be a checkmate in just 2 moves. King hides in a dustbin, bishop check, called checkmate. The game will be over, so in our key position, where black was considering to capture the knight, he might play the pity move king to h8, here comes the knight on h5, attacking to the f7, attacking to the h7, and pawn takes knight with create the same situation for you, alright. So, first, you might think of playing rook f8, but that is completely garbage, and if you dare to play h6 then knight takes f7 will lead into a checkmate. So in this position, some of you may consider of playing bishop e8, but here comes the aggressive move queen h5, look at this vulnerability of your position, everything is over, even if you dare to attempt h6 I can sacrifice my queen on f7, leading to a quick checkmate, capture, and look at this, it is called the 2 knights, nasty checkmate. This is the middle game strategy to attack in the king's site if black ever dares to attempt pawn exchanges in center, so we have bishop d7 h4, by pushing the d and h pawn, it builds a strong positional advantages for white where black can't break the e-pawn configuration with f6, therefore the h-pawn will create much instability in the king side, alright. Rook c1 rook d1, black can again either push his d-pawn or take the pawn. For instance, if your opponent dares to close the center in the middle game with d4, you get the outpost on e4, bishop c6 knight g5, making a bondage of 2 knight brothers because friends never die, the similar method which white tries to apply against black, h6 may come to disrupt the knight to defend his knight. But I will ignore the threat by innovating my queen on g4, if black accepts the sacrifice because he is greedy, the h-file will be wide open, and it will create a susceptibility situation for you. For instance, if a5 happens, then I will sacrifice my another knight on f6, because it can easily lead to a checkmate, that's the deficiency of your king's position, so you may try to eliminate the knight, but after bishop takes e4, I get the open diagonal to swim my bishop, and after you play any nonsense type of move, queen h6 will arrive, g6 to block the checkmating line. But here comes the spectacular bishop sacrifice with bishop takes g6, because after take, king h8 king g2, rook h1 is unstoppable, the game will be over. And let me share an inspirational quote with you. If you want to be happy, do not dwell in the past, do not worry about the future, focus on living fully in the present. So back to the current position, we have seen the variation behind d5 and d takes c4 will lead into the same symmetrical position as we already discussed in a previous variation. So black attempts to play h6, nice stuff, but after a couple of moves later, we did some pawn exchanges, and rather than capturing on c4, Torch decided to play queen g4, directly challenging the black king from a systematic approach. Now you have to deal with this bishop. Some of you may think of playing king h8, but after queen h5, black will play rook f8 and then I will sacrifice my bishop on h6, because it exposes the black king in kingside. And bishop e4 gets the avenue to checkmate black along with the queen. Black has to play f5, but after check king h8 knight takes pawn, I am threatening checkmate on g7, which is why black has to capture the knight. After that, you can follow up with the rook takes queen. No immediately, but after giving a check to the king, and picking up the bishop with a check. You can take away the queen from black's hand. This will be a wild and horrible situation for black. Going back to the position, black here played equilateral move knight d3, attacking to the rook. You want my rook, come and take it. Torch captured the pawn, and after a few moves, we have knight e4, threatening knight f6 check, which will lead into a decisive and devious scenario where black will be a few days guest in the earth. For instance, some may think of capturing the rook, but after knight check, take. It will be a checkmate in 3 moves. Look, the king has no square to run, the king will be wrecked and will get lost from his house. Going back, he didn't capture the rook, instead, he tried to demolish my position. He finally gets the e-pawn with a tempo, but it becomes too late for him. Queen h5, noteworthy move. Now bishop f6 knight g5 is coming to desolate your kingside, and if you dare to capture the bishop, then knight takes pawn will create a vulnerability situation for you. Furthermore, my bishop can join on e4 to associate it in the kingside attack. Alright, we have knight maneuvers, and bishop to a3, although this bishop is stupid. In this position, I urge you to pause the video and try to figure out the best move for white. Go. Okay, if you dare to find knight f6 check, then congratulations, you are the right one to play chess at the master level, because this is the only move which can lead into a potentially vanquish black's king. So after they capture on f6, there is a massive hole in the g7 where torch can potentially checkmate you. Bringing back the bishop all the way can't solve your issue, as I can play knight g5, now checkmate is unstoppable. Alright, so he decided to take the rook first, and torch played immediately knight g5, to checkmate Rifgade as fast as bullet train reaches at stations. He captured the knight, but it wouldn't make any issues for me cause I can checkmate black easily in the board. We have queen to c5 and bishop to e4. You may wonder that why torch didn't play queen h6 to checkmate black. No fool, Rifgade can move back his queen all the way back and protect his position. Think before you move, so that is the reason why we have bishop e4, attacking to the knight. We have knight d5, bishop takes knight. As you know that f takes g6 will create vulnerability to your king, which is why we have knight takes f6, bishop takes check, king slides queen check, captures, queen takes check, and see, the king has no relief squares. After the king moves back, rook takes bishop and checkmate is unstoppable. He have to sacrifice this queen, and soon he will be checkmated. What a wonderful game. I really like the game where torch invented a chess opening strategy. I demonstrates with you all the opening strategies and middle game attacking plans and tactics in this video. If you enjoyed my content, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wish you all the best. Bye bye, see ya.